Hello, I'm Clotilde Redfern, the Director of the Rory Peck Trust. It's really lovely to see so many of you here with us tonight. This ceremony is not only a showcase of the amazing reporting freelance journalists working against all odds to shine a light in the world's darkest corners, it also acts as a shot in the arm to me and my team. It reminds us why we're here, why the community of freelance journalists that contribute to international news gathering is so important, and why the Rory Peck Trust must continue to act as a safety net when things go wrong, because increasingly they do. According to a recent survey by the NCTJ, 4 in 5 UK journalists are worried about their safety while doing their jobs. And if you're staff, you probably have the support of a dedicated risk team, but 90% of journalists want more guidance and support on safety issues. The risks are becoming more complex and it's hard to keep up. The Rory Peck Trust has been running safety clinics at industry gatherings for 5 years, and I've been keen to make that support available year-round to journalists as and when they need it. And thanks to additional funding from the Google News Initiative, we'll be launching a risk and security help desk in the new year. A London bureau chief recently said to me, "The thing about news is the highs are really high, but the lows are really low, and it's hard to keep bouncing back." My hope is that tonight's ceremony gives you the lift that you need to bounce back despite the relentless news cycle this year has been. I hope that the recognition of these awards, as well as the support and financial assistance we provide, bolsters the global community of freelance journalists that's our driving purpose, to protect the important pool of independent journalists who in turn protect our democratic values in a world of increasing authoritarianism. As you can imagine, following the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, applications to our assistance funds tripled from that region. Our crisis fund, which usually lasts all year, was spent by the end of August. So we reached out to our regular fundraisers and offered places at the Royal Parks Half Marathon. We expected maybe half a dozen people to sign up, but an amazing 80 journalists took on the challenge, raising over £20,000 for the Trust. I can't name all our wonderful runners, but you'll recognise some of them in the pictures behind me, and I must tip my hat to Mark Grant from Sky, who did the whole race wearing a flak jacket. Yes, including the plates, in solidarity for journalists working in hostile environments. Coordinating that huge fundraising effort couldn't have been possible without the support of several key people who acted as newsroom ambassadors for us. Claire Day at CBS, Christina Marker at Sky, Adrian Mong at NBC, and Naveen Mabra at Channel 4. Thank you. We'd love to organise more events of this type, and if you'd like your newsroom to join in, do let me know. As well as our dedicated fundraisers and our valued award sponsors, AP, Google, and Sony, and some support from the Swedish Embassy, we're also blessed to be able to rely on core industry support from the BBC, Channel 4, and ITV. We also get vital contributions from Agence France Presse, Al Jazeera, CBS, CNN, the European Broadcasting Union, ITN, NBC, Reuters, Sky, News, ZDF, and the Telegraph Media Group. We're also deeply grateful to the Open Society Foundations for core support and to the Printing Charity for their annual grant. In addition, we receive grants from the Colonel Whitbread Trust, the Evan Cornish Foundation, and the Pursular Foundation. Thank you all so much for believing in our work and supporting it. I'm going to hand over now to Aisha Tull, who amazingly had bought a ticket to sit there with you. And because Kathy Newman has fallen sick, she's agreed to stand up and co-host the awards with Ashish Joshi from Sky News. So please welcome them on and we'll get started.
Thank you, Clotilde, for that wonderful introduction. And yes, I'm meant to be sitting there, but I'm standing here. very, very hardworking. I don't know why I do it to myself. But once again, a very warm welcome to the 2022 Rory Peck Awards. Thank you all of us for joining here at London's BFI South Bank, and thank you for those who are watching from all over the world on our live stream. If you want to share what's happening here at tonight's awards, please do so and tag at Rory Peck Trust or hashtag Rory Peck Awards. I know that many of you will be on call, ready to cover a breaking news story. I always have my phone on me. But please, can you make sure that your phones are on silent so that we can appreciate the work of the finalists that we are about to see. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're here to celebrate the work of freelancers in news and current affairs globally, including the independent journalists, filmmakers, and producers who work behind the camera, often in very challenging circumstances and without the organizational support, backup, or resources that so many of us take for granted. Most of us here work alongside freelancers. We know how much their work contributes to international news gathering, covering the events that we can't access and uncovering the stories that we can't reach. These awards are special in that they recognize the outstanding contribution that freelancers make to independent journalism around the world and honor those who, despite increasing threats and dangers, work tirelessly and bravely to bring us quality coverage of world events and underreported stories. The judges look at journalistic integrity and within that, duty of care and individual endeavor, and they consider the circumstances under which each entry was produced.
If you're familiar with the Rory Peck Awards, you will know that these awards are unique in not only celebrating the achievements of the winners, but also the finalists. Each one of them deserves recognition, and all of the finalists who are in the audience tonight will be invited on stage to share their stories. Before we meet the finalists and get into the awards proper, let's hear what the judges had to say.
Freelance journalists really are the spine of global journalism and news gathering. More often than not, they are the people who live in the countries, bear witness to events that are happening as they're happening, and share it with the world. The submissions and the entries that we saw this year were no exception. It was extraordinary to see just the spread and the scale of the stories that were submitted, but more importantly, the commitment that these freelance journalists showed to telling the stories of their countries, but perhaps more importantly, the stories that are shaping our world today.
The standard this year, as in previous years, has been incredibly high. Very difficult to choose the winners.
I think that it really shows the work that the freelancers have put into covering these stories and often unreported places and conflict that we aren't always able to get to.
It's often the freelance journalist who has the, the on the ground contacts, the network that make many of these stories possible, and on whom the global news industry is so incredibly reliant.
It's a great honor for Google and the Google News Initiative to support the Rory Peck Awards. And I think this is especially true this year, where we saw a number of entries that represents really the best and the most important stories of our time. And I think the awards, they capture how journalism still is a relevant power to hold powerful to account, to tell the best stories of our time and give visibility so that people can engage, people can commit, people can relate, and we can also drive solutions. We can think about ways of improving our lives and also improving society as a whole.
Well, it was a fantastic opportunity. I watched 10 films back to back, and it was hugely just encouraging, to be reminded that films like this, are being made, these stories from all over the world. And as you'd expect from a Rory Peck selection, in each case, every single one of these filmmakers had gone the extra mile, and sometimes quite literally, geographically.
It is very important to highlight the work of local freelancers right around the world, because often their contribution to international news gathering helps the general public better understand a particular cause or issue. Now, often it's because they are living the story themselves, so they can offer up specialist knowledge. bringing new angles, or they're able to shine a deserved spotlight on a new cause or issue. And I think all that was highlighted in our nominees.
The depth of research and investigation, and really the breadth of topics.
Everybody brought their own technique, their own style of shooting, and the content that we saw across all of the categories, we were blown away by what they managed to do.
It's amazing to me that freelance journalists are still the unsung heroes of our industry. They are in places that many of us as staff journalists don't often get to. They're quick, they're resourceful, and they bring to their stories a kind of intensity and investment that often you only get because they invest in the regions that they are covering in a way that we cannot.
These entries have been really informative, but also you can see the passion that is in them. And I think freelance journalism brings that. It brings the passion, it brings the immediacy, and that contribution into broadcast journalism is something that is invaluable, but also something that will have impact and is having impact now and in the future.
Now, if you want to find out more about any of the finalists and see their work in full, you can do so at the Rory Peck Trust website, rorypecktrust.org. Now, what you're all here for, onto our first award tonight, which is the News Award, sponsored by Google News Initiative. This award recognises the work of freelance journalists in the video coverage of a news event where the focus is on the immediacy of the story. The judges were looking for the quality and impact of the work, as well as individual endeavour and journalistic integrity. Before we find out who has won the prize, let's have a look at their work. And first, our finalist in this category is Spanish freelancer Raul Gale Abayan for Edge of the Arctic, where he filmed in the Arctic community of Duk-du-Yakdu in Canada, reporting on the immediate and urgent effects of climate change. Let's hear what the judges thought about it and see a clip of the entry.
Icebergs start to melt slowly and all gone now.
The waves would crash on the shores, and it was really scary.
The temperatures are warmer. It's getting scarier. Climate change is happening.
Climate change. Me as a hunter-traveler, I've noticed a lot of the lakes that connect to the ocean are drying out. Be nice to know what happened there. I've seen a lot of erosion going on. Where I go hunt my reindeer, there's a big hole of erosion. And I'm hoping 50 years from now, or 20 at least, this creek isn't dried out like these other creeks I usually fish at around here.
Everyone can make a little bit of a difference. Would say tax the 1%. We'd solve a lot of problems.
It's all for real, yeah. It's no joke. We're almost under the ocean.
When I first started watching this piece, I started to wonder whether is this a news piece or is this more of a feature? But the reality of it is, this is the news today, and this is what's happening today. And we can't anymore set it aside as the sort of pretty picture piece that we'll do at the end of a bulletin or put online. This is news. This is what's going on right now.
I was impressed by the way he gathered in-depth testimony of local people. Climate change is already a fact for them, and it's already impacting their own way of life, even though, in fact, it's not really visible because it all happens under the ice layer.
Going to the Arctic for a climate story has been done before, but this was done in a really interesting way. The camera footage was really beautiful. It was a really stunning piece, and we really liked the way that you kind of delved into the stories of individuals, and he also looked at the generations. We really liked that, that you could really feel the change happening because it was told through different generations.
We know the Arctic is a barren and desolate place, but what struck me with The Edge of the Arctic was the humanity with which the people who we met, who call that place home, were treated with. But I think more than anything, we met people of all generations living in the Arctic and how their lives have been so fundamentally changed by global warming.
It really does show how climate change is becoming if not the news story of our generation. Now, our next news finalist is a journalist and filmmaker from Kashmir, Bhat Burhan, with his film How Remote Areas in India Are Getting Vaccines, a reminder that the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over for much of the world. Let's see some clips and let's hear what the judges had to say.
This is what it takes to bring vaccines to some of the most remote places in the world. Hiking through snow and climbing mountains, risking an encounter with snow leopards, bears, or wolves. Public health workers in Jammu and Kashmir have been facing these risks as they go door to door to vaccinate against COVID-19. And it's even harder knowing they may have to do this all over again as new variants continue to emerge. Some residents are getting their very first COVID-19 shots.
Because salary is according to yuta es matlab yem hisab is kaam sheet karan tem hisab chun salary saitan kahin ta es matlab mutmain pani salary sa because ash wariya hectic job
ke agar insan bemar tu asa atmas pevan nerun zakmi gasna chan kathi tatun chuti mela gasun chu pevan.
As they wrap up, it's still snowing in Malwa. But the nurses are not bothered by the storm as they help a small community weather COVID.
This young journalist went to an underreported region of India. He accompanied nurses who are offering a COVID vaccination to the local population. He entered people's homes, he spoke with the people, and what really struck me is the great respect he shows to everybody he interviews. All this being very well shot and incredibly visual.
This piece really stood out because it was visually so incredible. My first thought when I watched it through was you could hit pause on that video at any point and each frame was a beautiful picture, it was a beautiful image. The technical level of this piece was incredible. The contrasts and the colors, these rich, bright colors against the snow was just stunning. And the interviews that he did, it just showed a level of maturity that you wouldn't expect from someone who's only 23.
In a way, it's a very small story about COVID and about a vaccine rollout affecting a part of the world that many people don't know much about and are very unlikely to ever visit. But I think for me, what made this submission so strong, as well as the humanity of the submission, it was technically flawless. The drone footage, the variety of images, all of it really stood out to me as not only a very solid piece of journalism, but a technically beautiful piece of journalism. And I think that marriage really made this submission stand out.
Finally, in this category is Sasha Ermenchenko and Pavel Kilmov's work in Ukraine for Reuters with footage that all of us will recognize. Let's have a look at what the judges thought and see some of their extraordinary footage.
Это ж я не одна, представьте. Все разгромлено, все разбито. Куда людям идти? С маленькими детками он сидят, с манежем и двое детей.
The war in Ukraine really is the story of our times. It has affected the planet in ways that we still don't understand. And to have this union of journalists on the ground working together, showing us the conflict in a spare, honest, humane, but unflinching way, I think was extraordinarily moving. But perhaps more than anything, it was the bravery with which these journalists had, going to the heart of this brutal and grinding conflict and sharing with the world what was happening on the ground in Ukraine, a place which is their home.
You could really tell that these freelancers were from Ukraine. You could tell that they knew the country, that they, it was a story that was very close to their hearts. There was also some amazing footage of soldiers in a bus where you kind of looked at them through the windows and you were just wondering what they were thinking. You could see in their faces they were just exhausted and distraught, and that was also very powerful for me.
It is a tribute to their courage and by extension to the courage of all local journalists covering the conflict on the ground. They documented the first months of the war in their region with really striking footage. For instance, the destruction in Mariupol or the distress from local people.
Every single image that you see captures that story of Ukraine and what's been unfolding for the last 6 months. There's the woman sitting on the bench and she's got tears in her eyes and she carries on talking while there are bombs falling behind her and she doesn't even flinch anymore. I think the other thing to remember is Sasha and Pavel were filming what was happening in their own country, and they were filming and they kept on going even though their country was changing in front of their eyes and their families and their friends would have been struggling. But they kept going because they must have felt it was so important to get this story out to the world.
Stunning and powerful work from all three finalists. Now, to tell us who has won the News Award, sponsored by Google News Initiative, please welcome to the stage Matt Cook, head of Google News Lab.
Good evening. It's great to be back. We're really proud to support this award. But we'd also like to say a big thank you to the Rory Peck Trust, not just for tonight, but for all the work that you do behind the scenes throughout the year, and for all you do for independent journalism. Thank you. Okay, so the winner of the 2022 Rory Peck News Award is Bat Burhan for his film How Remote Areas in India Are Getting Vaccines.
Hello everybody. I would like to say a big thank you for giving such recognition to my work. It's a real honor to be named as one of the winners of this year's Rory Peck Awards, particularly when I look at the long list of prestigious previous winners. So a big thank you for this. I have been working as a journalist since 2018. It has been almost 4 to 5 years now. My film on how the remote areas in India are getting vaccines was shot in Kashmir. The film shows the immense commitment of the healthcare workers who go door to door to vaccinate people in Kashmir. The film features a journey of the healthcare workers to a far-flung village despite bad weather. Well, you all know Kashmir has been caught up in the conflict for past 30 years. Most of the stories from Kashmir reach to you at a very high cost. As journalists are facing intimidation and censorship more than ever. almost every media house has taken a back foot and altered their editorial policies. So during such crisis, a lot of stories disappear in front of our own eyes. I'm extremely proud that despite such challenge, one of the stories from Kashmir, reported by a Kashmiri, has made it to this year's Rory Peck Awards list. I don't have enough words to convey a big thank you to the editors at Insider, who have always supported me, and in my good and bad times, they have helped me to reach where I am today. Insider has given a home to my stories from Kashmir and from different parts of India. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Mark. Well done. Very well done. Now, as we all know, every one of the finalists deserves recognition. So as part of a long-standing tradition here at the Rory Peck Awards, we always invite the other shortlisted finalists up on stage to say a few words. They too were selected out of hundreds of entries, which is an incredible achievement. Unfortunately, Sasha and Pavel aren't able to join us this evening. We had hoped we would all get the opportunity to applaud and thank them for their work on the ground in Ukraine. To say a few words on their behalf, John Pullman, Global Managing Editor of Visuals at Reuters. So please welcome to the stage both John Pullman and also Raul Gail Abayan as well.
Hello, everybody. I'm John, and I'm congratulations to Bart and the other finalists here. I'm humbled to be here representing Sasha and Pavel, who couldn't get visas in time to be here this evening. But I'm pleased to say they are watching on the live stream somewhere in Donetsk on the Russian-controlled part of Ukraine this evening. So I hope you're enjoying the show, guys. Reuters relies on the freelance community around the world. We support freelancers, we give them security training, we give them legal support. We try and look after them as much as we can. Sasha and Pavel have worked with us for 8 years now, covering that conflict. They were there on February the 24th in the early hours. It was their images of Russian tanks driving into Donetsk that the world saw that told us this phase of the war had begun. And they've worked their contacts, their local knowledge, their familiarity with the geography to produce exclusive coverage ever since. I mean, you saw some of those images. They are absolutely extraordinary. Like so many of the people on stage tonight, they are the bravest people you will ever meet. Just this summer, the vehicle they were traveling in exploded. The driver was killed. Pavel was badly injured. The good news is he's recovered now and he's just coming back to work. But their bravery it leaves me speechless. The story has left a mark on them both. As Pavel said, I didn't understand how this could happen. A huge city has turned to ruins. The apartment where I used to live, there is nothing left. And Sasha says, it wasn't like I chose to become a war photographer, but life forced me into it when the conflict started. Being in the middle of it, I had no choice but to become a conflict photographer and shoot conflict video. So I want to say thank you to Sasha and Pavel, and thank you to Rory Peck. This is the best awards event of the year, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm really pleased that for the hard work you do in recognizing the contribution freelancers make. Thank you, everybody.
Well, first of all, that's not me. I would not be able to kill any caribou. I would feel very, very sad. You know, congratulations to the winner. I mean, your work is amazing. You are only 23 years old. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's great. You know what? I didn't prepare any speech. I was just when we were watching the first initial video, my friend Lynn, when the video finished, just said, "Oh wow, I love the news," you know. And I was thinking the same. I was like, "Wow, you really do this job not for money or for anything. It's because you really love to tell the story, you know." And So I felt a little bad because I think all the nominees and all the Rory Peck, we've been asked, oh, what was the main challenge, to do your story? And for me, it was only, it was like just the low temperatures, especially for a Spanish like me, and the low budget, So it's, look, I just want to say thanks to Rory Peck for the amazing work that it's doing. And sadly, it's more and more important what they are doing, because the conditions in general for journalists, but especially for freelancers, are getting very, very difficult and very dangerous. So thanks for Rory Peck, and congratulations to the winner again, and to all the finalists. Thank you.
Huge congratulations to all the News Award finalists, and a big thank you to Matt Cook and Google News Initiative for their continued support. Now, on to the News Features Award. This award recognises the work of freelance journalists in video news features that take a more in-depth look at a story beyond the immediacy of breaking news. Our first News Features finalist is George Henton, and his piece, Lebanon on Life Support, a stark reminder of the challenges faced by the people of Lebanon. Let's see some clips and hear what the judges had to say about his work.
Lebanon, on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. After decades of corruption and financial mismanagement, the small nation is now facing a humanitarian crisis. For much of the last year, there has been no government. Almost 80% of the population is now living in poverty. The country's public hospitals, a lifeline for many, are struggling to manage.
The patients who I received at the hospital have no other place to go to. Just being there is a must.
This is the story of Lebanon's fight for survival.
If Lebanon does run out of fuel, a lot of people will lose their lives. That's as simple as that.
I think a medical system, a successful proficient system, has many building blocks under it. And what you see right now is those building blocks crumbling down or disappearing bit by bit.
What really stood out for me in the Lebanon film is that there were no heroes and villains. As filmmakers, we have this tendency, right, to find a good guy and a bad guy and pit them against each other. But in this film, you got all the shades of what it means to navigate through life in a city as embattled as Beirut. And for me, that was really the depth of this piece.
This documentary had some incredibly eloquent and sassy characters in it who told, the drama of the Lebanese story from the inside. I mean, one shot that stands out particularly, the engineer who had to keep the hospital going, staring at his computer monitor at the sort of slowly declining levels of fuel. And throughout the film, there were lots of these moments of sensitivity, this detail that really had quite a high impact.
Every day I receive calls from doctors, and they are asking for certain medications. Sometimes these doctors are asking for the medications for themselves, for their families. But when a medication is not available, it's not available anywhere.
I thought the story told through the eyes of the hospital workers, particularly the young doctors, and their struggle about whether to stay or to go. I thought that presented a really powerful narrative that resonated with me and surely with audiences around the globe. I also just thought it had a lot of depth to it, and it brought the viewer along on the journey of what they were going through emotionally every day.
Next up is finalist Jamal Osman, who delivered unprecedented access to the heart of al-Shabaab-controlled Somalia. Let's see a clip of Inside al-Shabaab and hear what the judges thought.
A graduation ceremony for around 200 al-Shabaab fighters, the latest recruits for the militants that rule over a third of Somalia. They are fighting to overthrow the internationally recognized government of Somalia. Western nations regard al-Shabaab as a terrorist organization that's causing havoc and instability in the East Africa region. That's why they have been targeting their leaders with drone strikes, funding the African Union mission, and supporting the Somali government. But after 16 years of fighting to eliminate the militants, Al-Shabaab still remains strong. I have come to the group's heartland to find out why. Al-Shabaab's goal is to govern the whole of Somalia under strict Sharia law. And that means educating future generations to create a loyal following. Children wear what are considered to be Al-Shabaab symbols on their foreheads. The group have opened dozens of schools.
I think what's inescapable from the piece that Jamal Osman has done on Al-Shabaab is what a master he is at what he does. That piece of journalism is so revelatory. Very often, you only hear about Al-Shabaab when there's been an explosion or something. And we, as news audiences, we've become very used to seeing UGC footage about what happened and maybe some of the players behind. What Jamal got was the kind of access, and then he followed up that access with the kind of incisive journalism that truly, I do think Jamal is one of the few who can bring that.
It's hard to sort of imagine how one would begin to start getting that access, the kind of negotiation involved in getting in, and the degree of threat one faces when one's in that territory, and the challenge one faces of being able to come out with a comprehensive, balanced report.
I think one of the most interesting things from the Al-Shabaab story was that Jamal was able to secure an interview with one of the senior leaders. Also, the scenes from inside the school I thought were very powerful. It gave a different perspective to this terrorist group that we don't normally see.
I'm lucky enough to work quite a bit with Jamal, and he's an extraordinary journalist. He's an extraordinary self-starter. And the knowledge and the contacts that he has in the region that he mostly covers, but his journalism in general is absolutely inspiring on a daily basis.
Our third finalist in this category is Surabhi Tandon with her piece Using Ice to Battle India's Heat, part of the Life at 50 Celsius series from BBC News Arabic. Let's see a clip and hear what the judges had to say about her work.
Delhi continues to reel under a heat wave as temperatures touched 45 degrees.
गर्मी बर्दाश्त नहीं होती। कितना गर्मी है? गर्मी। तो उसको व्हाइट पेंट ढाबे पे लगवाने का है।
इंस्टेंट रिलीफ मिले गर्मी से।
I think it's always difficult to illustrate really strong stories around climate change that engage an audience. I think what Surabhi was able to produce from the oppressive heat in India did just that. She was able to draw the viewer in and give a real sense of place. You felt the heat as if you were standing in the room. The use of the thermal camera, I thought, was really powerful to really give an indication of exactly how hot it was inside the home. Just some really creative storytelling devices there.
So 3 locations. It was very colourful. It told the story of climate change, not just through these are the terrible things that will happen, but also the solutions that people are bringing to cope with these insanely high temperatures.
For me, it really ticked all the boxes when it comes to powerful climate reporting that manages not to let the viewer walk away with a sense of doom, and that is a real challenge. It is classic solutions reporting that doesn't undermine the gravity of the issue at hand. You talk about the heat, the intense heat that India has been facing, but it really highlights intelligent solutions.
I think it was a huge surprise for me and the other jurors in finding that a story that often doesn't really engage you was so well told, so original in the way it was approached, and the visuals and the approach as news you can use on a global level on such a massive theme as the climate emergency just stood out. It just was different. The storytelling was different. The ambition of the storytelling was different.
Now to announce the winner, please welcome Lillian Landor, Senior Controller of BBC News International Services.
Hi. It's an absolute privilege to be here and to acknowledge a community of producers and journalists without whom I can categorically say that the journalism of the BBC and Sky and Reuters and Channel 4 would be much, much poorer. So hats off to you. I have to recognize that and this is by pure chance, that I'm connected to all three of these. I was brought up in Lebanon. I used to be Jamal Osman's foreign editor when I was at Channel 4 News. And of course, BBC Arabic now comes under my watch. So I want them all to win, and okay. Well. The winner of, and I hope you are here, Jamal Osman. At last. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great work.
Yeah, thank you very much to Rory Peck. I remember I was one of the finalists back in 2009, I think, or 2010, as a younger guy. Self-shooter with my small camera, going somewhere in East Africa and coming back with some material. And the message I got from being a finalist was, you're doing the right thing and keep going. And Rory Peck is amazing because it supports freelance journalism and it encourages. So, and 13 years later, I am still here, going strong, with few more kids and gray hair, gray beard. I would not be able to achieve all of this, and I'm lucky to have been working with Channel 4 News. My former and current bosses are here. And, in doing stories like Al-Shabaab, aside the access, you need, even if you have the access, you need, editors who trust your judgment, who trust you, and believe in you that you can go and hang out with Al-Shabaab and come back to London. And there aren't that many editors who I'm sure who would, say, go and do your stuff and come back. So thank you very much to my former and current bosses who are here and those who are not here. I also like to thank the local team, whom some of them I cannot mention for their own safety, because I'm in London, they are in Somalia, who, help me whenever I go to those places. And usually we, thank the contributors, but I cannot thank Al-Shabaab. So we usually say thank you to the contributors, but I'll be in jail if I do that. So I won't do that, especially after that film went out there. Secret services calling me, asking me if I can help them, which I never do anyway. So, and gaining access to people like Al-Shabaab, it's about trust. I think as much as you have to trust yourself, your bosses have to trust you. People like Al-Shabaab, like Ahmed Mahad Karate, who I interviewed, there's 5 million bounty on his head, and they won't trust anyone. They trust you because they know I am. When it comes to journalism, I'm very strict. and I don't cross the line. I just do my job. I tell the story and come back to London. So I would say it's about trust, gaining access to these places. And sadly, I'm still working, but sadly for my country, Somalia, still in a civil war. And as one of my colleagues earlier said, we only hear Al-Shabaab when they carry out attacks, but they control large parts of Somalia, and they are determined to hold on to that area at least, or take over Somalia like Taliban did in Afghanistan. So once again, thank you very much, and thank you for coming here.
It's truly extraordinary, Jamal. Very, very well done. And as a former colleague of yours, I'm so, so proud. Well, now let's welcome to the stage the other incredible finalists in this category, George Henton and Surabhi Tandon.
Okay, thank you so much, and congratulations to Jamal. That was an incredible film, and such bravery to make a film like that. So it's amazing. It is such an honour to be nominated alongside both of you. Your films are amazing, and it's a real honour to be up here. I'm also really pleased to, well, I was going to say to be standing up here with my two colleagues, but they've chosen to stay in their seats, which is very nice of them. But James and Speda, we made this film together. And it's great to have them here. I'd also like to say thank you to Ilya, who is our sound person, who I'm afraid couldn't make it today. I talked the other day to the young doctor in our film, and I told her that we had been nominated for this award. And she just asked that if I could say that if I could make clear that people knew that all the challenges that we showed in the film, the lack of life-saving medication, the doctors and the nurses that are leaving in huge numbers, the power cuts, and just the lack of hope, really, are ongoing and in many aspects getting worse. Lebanon itself is facing a cholera outbreak right now, and the corruption and the economic mismanagement which has destroyed that country in many ways doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Honestly, it's rather bleak, and over the year or so that I lived in Lebanon, there are few people who saw much of a future or any glimmer of hope. Anyway, thanks very much, and congratulations again to all the other nominees, and thank you to Rory Peck. Thank you.
Well, I've actually reported, I've reported from conflict situations for a long time, but I don't think anything is as unnerving as standing on a stage in front of industry colleagues and trying to say something that you all don't already know about. But I'll give it a shot. I first want to thank Rory Peck for this honor. I've been a broadcast journalist and a freelancer in the last decade of my work. And as a freelancer working without institutional support, it can get quite difficult, it can get quite lonely. So what the Rory Peck is doing is extremely important. Thank you very much, first and foremostly. I sort of wanted to highlight 3 aspects of our film that I found very special that I wanted to share with everybody here. The first part is, for those of you who've seen our film, the main protagonists were women, but not women as victims as we often see them in developing countries. Women as survivors, rather fighters, who've sort of taken it upon themselves to change their circumstances, given the minuscule resources that they have. And I feel like there's always a lesson to learn there for all of us. And I was very happy that we could have them as part of our film. Second, sorry, climate deniers, but the climate crisis is already upon us. And we are about to see what that is going to bring into all of our lives. But that is half the story. I think human response is the other half. And for that human response to be mass scale, the changes that we undertake have to be small and incremental. So we were very happy as a team to be able to make a film that looked at simple solutions, because when you have small changes, more and more people can get on board with what we have to do to save our future. Third, I want to say that I think our film was a true global collaboration. You know, as a journalist who's worked in a developing country from the global south, but has worked only for international productions, I have to admit it has taken me a long time to arrive at a place where my voice can be front and center. And for this, I have to thank the team at BBC, everybody who's involved, especially our executive producer, Monica Gansi, who couldn't be here today. But it was a film where we weren't trying to find characters to fit a narrative. It was a film where journalists were allowed, where I was allowed to lead what we would do with the film based on my experience. And perhaps this is not something that we like hearing, but it is true that people like me, who have journalists like me, who have no base in the West, still find it difficult to have representation in international production. So I'm very, very happy that the BBC allowed us this platform, and that the judges and Rory Peck sort of brought that back, supported us. And lastly, I want to say, obviously, the fact that all of you are here, and I know that each of you want to work towards a more global form of storytelling where that representation and diversity is equal and not there for the sake of it, gives me great hope. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and I'll see you for a round of drinks later. Thank you.
I just have this image of al-Shabaab commanders watching a dodgy live stream in Somalia at the moment. So thank you to all of our finalists and to you, Liliane. We now come to a part of the evening when we would like to take a reflective pause, honouring and remembering those journalists that have been killed in the pursuit of journalism. We know that many of you here tonight will have lost friends and colleagues to this increasingly dangerous profession. The Committee to Protect Journalists Global Impunity Index tells us that in the last year, at least 42 journalists have been killed with impunity. Please join me in a minute's silence to recognize the journalists who have been killed undertaking their work since we last met.
And I think we should all just give them a round of applause for the ultimate sacrifice that they ultimately had to give just for doing their job. Now, on to the Martin Adler Prize, supported by the Embassy of Sweden, a special category judged by the Rory Peck trustees. Every story from a foreign location in an international news outlet bears the fingerprints of an outstanding local journalist whose intimate knowledge of their surroundings opens avenues that wouldn't be possible without them. The Martin Adler Prize honours a local freelancer or field producer who has made a significant contribution to news gathering. In a few moments, we will reveal the winner of the prize. But before we do that, let's find out a little bit more about the three finalists. Mohammed Alamin Mohammed Ahmed from Sudan, Parth Nikhil and Altia Monika, both from India. Firstly, Mohammed, a Sudanese journalist based in Khartoum. He began his career in journalism in 2003, working for local media while the Omar al-Bashir government, renowned for its repression, was in power. It was that same regime that forced Mohammed and his family to move to Yemen in the 1990s. While in exile, Mohammed studied journalism, even though he trained in engineering. He could not ignore the injustice he saw at home. He says, "I was always thinking about ways to help the Sudanese people confront Bashir's totalitarian regime and to raise awareness towards peace, justice, freedom and promotion of human rights." Let's hear what the judges said.
His entry was impeccable in many ways. He did an immense amount of research under considerable difficulty. I mean, he came under considerable danger while he was doing it on many occasions. And then he put the story together. He wrote it in a very, all the complexities, he wrote in a very clear way about the problems for the gold mines in the Central African Republic and how it impacts other parts of the world.
So he writes beautifully, and the depth of research that goes behind it, the fact that he was very tenacious and really followed that story when others might have not persevered, especially considering the challenging nature of the topic of which he was writing and the exclusive nature of it. And it was picked up by CNN and other parties as well and went international.
Our next finalist is Parth Nikhil, an independent journalist based in Mumbai who writes for multiple international publications, including The Washington Post, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, and the Los Angeles Times in India. He writes predominantly for People's Archive of Rural India, whose managing editor nominated Parth for this prize. He concentrates on socio-political stories, especially in rural India. His many accolades include the European Commission's Lorenzo Natali Media Prize, and earlier this year, Parth received the Alfred Friendly Fellowship hosted by the Missouri School of Journalism. His style of writing has been likened to Hemingway and Steinbeck in its power and beauty. Let's hear what the judges had to say.
As in previous years with Parth, I've loved reading his pieces right from the start of the pieces he writes. The first paragraph of all his pieces encapsulates what the whole story is about. It summarizes what it is in impeccable wording. And I just want to get on to the next paragraph when I start reading his pieces.
Parth Nikhil, in his beautiful writing and his real ear for a great quote, and his ability to win people's trust and let them tell their story to him, and then he tells it to us, has highlighted some issues in rural India that get very little coverage. They're about marginalized members of society.
Our third finalist in this category is Alatia Stephanie Monika. Alatia is an independent journalist from Bangalore with a particular interest in social policy and issues relating to the eradication of gender and caste. Alatia speaks 5 languages fluently and has a triple major degree in English, journalism and psychology. Now she's just showing off. She has worked with several news outlets, including Caravan Magazine and Unbiased the News, who picked up her story about bonded labour, caste and sexual crimes in rural Karnataka. This story was the most viewed on the website for several months. Let's hear more about Alatia.
Alethia's story was a really important element of balancing the kind of coverage we often get from India, which is about the rise of the middle class, which of course is something that is undeniably happening. But at the same time, there's still marginalized members of society. There still is the bonded labor that she talked about. So Alethia's coverage and focusing on these communities provides a much needed balance.
It was fresh, it was current. It made me look at the world in a slightly different way. She really, again, researched that topic thoroughly, really lived it, got inside the heads and the backgrounds of those who were deprived and managed to tell their story. And not just the story itself, although the story is fantastic that she told, but also the way it was presented, the way that the words and the visuals are combined with video. Just, there was a great use of multimedia in her piece.
And to tell us who has won, please give a very warm welcome to Her Excellency Miss Michaela Kumlin Granit, Ambassador of Sweden.
Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, have a good evening. It's a great privilege to stand here on this stage once again to present the winner of the Martin Adler Prize in 2022. And I really want to thank the Rory Peck Trust once again for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. And partnering with the Rory Peck Trust is of great importance for us. Press and media freedom is essential in a democratic society. And as many of you know, Martin Adler was a Swedish freelance journalist who still, 16 years after his tragic passing, continues to inspire journalists from all over the world. And his journalistic deed and work for media freedom will never be forgotten. And I'm also very happy and honored that Martin's daughter and brother are actually here this evening as well. So I'm very happy that I've been able to meet with you as well. And the Swedish Embassy is very proud to continue to support the Martin Adler Prize, especially in a time when freedom of speech and the safety of journalists is under threat on such a global scale. And in times of crisis, the free media is essential and must never be taken for granted. So I would wish to congratulate this year's finalists for this Martin Adler Prize: Parth Nikhil, Mohammed Alamin, and Alitea Stephanie Monica. The work that the three of you carry out is as a true source of inspiration and immensely important. So thank you for your courage and for the important work that you all do. And also not only congratulations, but also thank you. Democracy is worth protecting every day. The freedom to participate, speak, think, write, express, and love should never be taken, as I said earlier, for granted. So, getting back to the prize, the winner of this year's Martin Adler Prize is Mohammed Alamin.
Hold this too.
Please.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to stand here today. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for the Rory Peck. And thank you for my colleagues in the Middle East High who nominated me for this big trust and recognition of my work. Actually, it's for me, it's a moment of solidarity with the Sudanese people who are still protesting on the streets, some being killed by the military generals and brutal militiamen, and they're being also killed by the maneuver elites, some politicians actually in my country. So I have a very short message to my colleagues, my journalists in Sudan. if I have to advise, I advise them only to be themselves, only to be independent, and to tell the truth and to tell the real stories of what's going on the streets in Sudan. We would like the world to understand what's going on in Sudan. The second message is also a big message of solidarity with the families of the martyrs and the families of hundreds of people that goes missing in Sudan. I mean, if you have like small visit to the mosques of Khartoum, you can find that the pro-democracy protesters being punished not while they are alive, but after they are died, actually, because hundreds of bodies are still stranded in the mosques of Khartoum in order those who wants to rule the country, they are still keeping them there in order to hide the evidence of the reasons and the circumstances of their killings. So I have another message as well, which is a message of love actually for my family, my daughters, Noor and Nuwar, my wife, Adila, my parents, and my friends, and all those who taught me in word of actually single words of values in my life. So the stories that I've been nominated for is, one is about the presence of the African mercenaries in Wagner in Central African Republic. So that story is actually a story of the community, small community in South Darfur state in a place called Bulbul village. Those people have been actually represented the repeated cycles of violence in Africa, actually, in Sudan and in Sub-Saharan, because they've been subjected to the violence in 2003 and 2004, while if you may know that the first version of the militia men of the Janjaweed and what happened in Darfur of the genocide in 2003 and 2004, those people have been displaced by that time. So then, because they have, I believe they have a strong dignity not to depend on the aid, on the international aid, actually. So they went out to work on the gold mining areas. So, but the second wave, actually, and the second version of the Janjaweed, who are ruling the country now in Sudan, of what they call the Rapid Support Forces, they attacked them again, and they looted the things that they have, and they tracked them. So the other migrant of them, they went outside the country for the Central African Republic. So, but the bad news waiting them there, because the leaders of the car as well have an agreement with the Wagner to take the resources of the country, the gold, diamond, and uranium, in return of protecting the government. And so those people, they've been there, but they've been expelled and attacked brutally from the Wagner group, with actually many atrocities happened to them. So, but in the end, they have to say, sadly, that the looting of the African resources is, you may know, that it's not limited to Russia. And without further details, actually. So my second story is about the running of secret mobile clinics during the protests in Sudan by Sudanese doctors. So I cannot also talk further about this, because I give a word of promise to those doctors, because you may know that the eyes of the security is still tracking them. But one day, I know that the bravery story of those doctors may be heard somewhere. So thank you once again. Thank you for your listening.
Congratulations again to Mohammed. Now, please welcome to the stage our other outstanding finalists, Parth Nikhil and Altia Monika.
It's good to be back. In the first 7 months of 2022, 9 journalists were arrested in India. One journalist named Siddiq Kapan has spent more than 750 days in prison already. And it's no wonder that India's ranking in the World Press Freedom Index has continued to drop over the past few years. The mainstream media has found an easy way out of this mess. It has chosen to be the PR machinery of the current government and is busy attaining new lows every day. And so this recognition means a lot because it comes at a difficult time for journalism in India. And I'd like to thank the People's Archive of Rural India for consistently giving me the platform to do the stories that don't find space in India's mainstream media. Thank you to the Thakur Foundation as well for giving me a grant this year to do the stories on access to public health. And a shout out to my journalist parents who've made a lot of things easier for me. Lastly, thank you to the Rory Peck Trust for this inspiring evening. Congratulations to all the nominees and winners. Nights like tonight reassure your faith in good old-fashioned journalism. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. It's really overwhelming to be part of such a prestigious event. I'm a very fresh face to journalism. And I'd firstly like to thank God God knows I've tried to get away from this position, but I've just been consistently coming back to journalism again and again, and now I think I'm here to stay. So, and I'd also like to thank the Rory Peck Trust for recognizing my work. It's not easy to be a freelance journalist. I was earlier telling one of the staff that Indian freelance journalists, they don't have any kind of identification. If you want to get a press card, you'll have to be part of an existing mainstream journalism space, and you have to be working for 10 years. So people like me, I just walk around with visiting cards. And it's really difficult when you have to explain to the police or explain to government officials why you're here and why you're asking questions. I'd also really like to thank my editor, Ankita. She has consistently been a huge support to me and my work. She's always been encouraging, and I really thank her for nominating me for this award. I'd like to thank the organization that I worked with for this story, Unbiased the News. Their work ethic and their values are something that I haven't seen in any other space, and I really thank them for making that space. I'd also like to thank my friends and family. I really found it hard to get here, and there's literally been an army of people who've tried to get me here. My family, Sophie from the Rory Peck Trust, who followed up with my visa and flight tickets and everything. I'd also like to thank Rahul Pise. He was partly nominated. He should have been nominated also because he was with me on the day of the story, on the field visit. And it was quite scary because during the story, we knew that the system was with the perpetrators. And at one point, we felt like maybe we might not make it back home. So I really thank him for his support. But the reason why the story was so risky is because caste itself as a system is completely ingrained into every part of the country. And bonded labor, even though I could see it and it's happening today, the government completely denies its existence. And I hope that people like me who like to tell really ugly truths that, these things still happen. I hope that it makes some kind of change. And caste is not just an Indian phenomenon. Caste is a global phenomenon, as academics like Suraj Jangde and Isabel Wilkerson has said through their work. And I hope that the world is paying attention and wants to make more change. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone in that category, and also thank you to the Ambassador Michaela Kumlin-Granit and to the Swedish Embassy for kindly supporting this prize. We have now come to our last award of the evening. You'll be happy to know. The Sony Impact Award for Current Affairs, which recognises freelancers working in long-form current affairs, examining a single issue or story and has an impact on the viewer, policy or public awareness. Before we see clips of the 3 finalists, the judges felt that a special commendation should go to Martin Brodeur and Matthias Deniso for their film Coal in the Lungs, which the judges recognised as a brilliant piece of filmmaking with a clear and meaningful impact plan. So well done to Martin Brodeur and Matthias Deniso. Now, on to the finalists. First up is freelance journalist Yusuf Anka from Nigeria with The Bandit Warlords of Zamfara. This film has exposed an almost unreported crisis and has sparked conversation at the highest levels, including with those who tried to suppress the story. Let's have a look.
My name is Yusuf. I am a law student, and I was raised in Zamfara. My mother is Fulani. My father is Hausa. This is my home, Gusau. Through long coexistence, Hausa and Fulani have built a shared culture. Hausa is spoken by everyone, and intermarriage is common. But in rural Zamfara, age-old differences persist. Hausa and Fulani are fighting over land and water. The crisis is made worse by climate change, corruption, and poverty. Thousands of young Fulani have joined ultra-violent bandit gangs. Armed with AK-47s, they burn villages, abduct the inhabitants, and slaughter anyone who resists. Who are these bandits? What do they want? My journey will take me to meet the victims of the violence and will bring me face to face with some of the most feared Fulani gang leaders in Zamfara.
Loved this film. We were so impressed by Yusuf's work, but the courage involved in going to this place, which is considered impossible to film in by most broadcasters, was just phenomenal.
It is so important that voices from all communities are empowered to tell the story to the world, but also it brings an understanding that only someone from the community could bring. So we found that this filmmaker was very brave. His journalism was really good. And for once, I think the world is understanding what is happening in Zamfara.
They used very effective ways of delivering the content. And I think each piece or each part of the story, when you were watching it, engaging with the content, was really blowing you away in terms of the delivery, the people that they spoke to on the ground. And that really brought the story together. It was a really strong piece of work.
Well, one of the pieces of impact that this film has had has brought us a new voice from Nigeria. Yusuf Anka, who is the freelancer who worked on the project, he's a Nigerian law student, he's the reporter and the on-screen presence, getting us into a part of Nigeria that he's from, where other journalists have really been unable to access. So huge congratulations to him for that achievement.
An extraordinary film from a very brave young man. Our second finalists in this category are Kim Paul Nugent and Chris Phillips from Australia with their film entitled Conversations with Coal Miners about Climate Change. Journalist and former activist Kim Paul Nugent goes on a journey through the heart of Australia's coal country, meeting both sides of a vicious national debate. Let's have a look at their film and hear what the judges had to say.
Ask them what do they think of Australia and the world, and they'll say, it's fucked.
Where we're going to is the heartland of the coal industry. Yeah, so we're making this documentary about the state of the coal industry, future of coal.
Mining is God in this country.
If they shut all the coal mines down like they want to, this town will be gone.
It's just going to decimate everything.
Yeah, it'll flatten this place.
So, just wondering what your thoughts are on climate change.
It's a big money-grabbing fraud, I believe.
It's the biggest rot in the world, biggest scam in the world, man.
You try to avoid that subject because you're always going to have an argument with someone over it. Yeah. Because some people believe in it and other people don't.
I'm trying to arm myself with answers to the coal miners' main arguments against renewable energy and for coal, because having all these conversations with the coal miners is really hard.
We understand that coal is what drives the world right now, but it's time to actually start moving away from it. And there are definitely more options out there that don't need to be so destructive.
What he achieves, what Kim achieves in this film is something that we don't normally see. It's not the same old tropes and the same old way of approaching the climate message. In fact, he tells us that he's an activist and he's disillusioned with the effectiveness he's had, and he's going to take a different approach. He's going to sit down with the people who are on the other side of the debate, and he's going to gradually work into their trust so they can have a respectful side-by-side conversation about how to move Australia forward. These kinds of films are extremely rare. It's a very important tool.
So the way that it was delivered when they were discussing with the coal miners and the community really made you think about the impact of the change that is being proposed. And I think that was something that really, as a viewer, made you think about the story in a much more deeper and effective way.
It was different from other climate change films in that impact was built into it. He wanted to go and talk to people with different views than his, and he felt optimistic that just that conversation could bring about change, and we saw that it did.
In this film, it's a very brilliant example and brilliant illustration that other filmmakers can learn from. It's a way of taking controversial topics and making people find common ground and learn from it. So other filmmakers who are covering other issues that have very big differences, they could learn a lot from this approach.
Our third finalists are Karim Shah and Ramita Navai for their film Afghanistan, No Country for Women. Filmed on the ground in Afghanistan over the past year, reporter Ramita and director Karim exposed the harsh realities for women under the Taliban rule. Let's have a look and hear what the judges thought.
Last year, after the Taliban swept to power and proclaimed Islamic law, we began investigating the fate of Afghanistan's women. The regime had pledged to protect women's rights, but we'd heard reports that in the west of the country, young women had started disappearing without trace. Mariam had disappeared 3 weeks ago. Her mother showed me pictures of her, graduating just before the Taliban takeover. The Taliban has insisted to the world it protects women's rights. But what had begun as a search for Mariam had revealed dozens of women jailed without trial for leaving their husbands or for sheltering in refuges from domestic abuse. A few days later, the Taliban broke their promise to allow girls back to school. But they continue to insist that they respect the rights of women. The women we met said that with every day, their hopes evaporate and their lives diminish.
So the film Afghanistan, No Country for Women was handled with a lot of sensitivity, but also a lot of maturity. You can see the craft of the filmmakers and the respect they gave to the topic, and that really stood out for us. But also, especially in Afghanistan, yes, women's rights has been covered over and over, but it is important not to stop. We cannot just accept and move on. We have to keep on highlighting on these issues, and that's why I think this film stood out for us.
I think the way that this piece was shot really gave us an insight into different characters in the piece. So they were able to open up some deep discussions with Taliban leaders, etc., that maybe we haven't seen in the past.
So quite rightly, the world was very concerned about what the role of women in Afghanistan was going to be after the Taliban took control. They made a lot of promises, but we waited to see. And so a film like this is incredibly important because it gets us in, it gets us on the ground, it gets us into the communities and into the lives of women, and actually into this extraordinary prison where we see and meet these women who've been arrested quite arbitrarily and held without the knowledge of their families. This is quite a major substantiation of appalling kind of loss of due process. So for that alone, the film was a fantastic watch, but I also think it was incredibly impactful.
So there we have our 3 Sony Impact Award for Current Affairs finalists, all stories with extraordinary impact, very powerful. It is worthy of mention that Sony were founding sponsors of the Rory Peck Awards and have been loyal in their support of the Trust for over 26 years now. That's quite some legacy. And to announce tonight's winner, please welcome to the stage from Sony, Jan Salmon Legonja.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jan Salmon Le Gagneur, and I'm sorry for giving you a hard time with my name. I'm heading the marketing department at Sony Europe for consumer and professional products in all the imaging area. I'm very pleased to be here tonight to be able to see the extraordinary work that has been made by freelancers. At Sony, we are passionate by products that are used to tell those stories. And the engineers every day listen to the feedbacks from cameramen, from filmmakers, from creators and photographers to make them better, to make them lighter, to make them more resilient and more reliable. But more importantly, they are also working on technology that enable the users not to care so much about the technicality of the product and trust their camera in any situation. And that's for us our most important thing, that the user can trust the camera on the field. As Hashish mentioned a bit earlier, Sony, it's already 26 years since the beginning of the trust that we are supporting Rory Peck. And for me, it's the first time to be at this event. So I have to say, it's a great honor to be here and witness all this amazing work that has been done through the year. So I would like to thank the Trust for all the work that has been done and all the vital groundwork that is done every day for the freelancers. But enough talking. I think it's time now to, without further ado, to announce the winner of the Sony Impact Award for the Current Affair 2022. So, I'm very, very happy, actually. And the winner of the Sony Impact Award goes to Yusuf Ananka.
Good evening to you all. The Bandit Warlords of Zamfara is a story that tells, it's a documentary that tells a story of a decade-old crisis. Despite its long history, the crisis is largely underreported, and even where it is reported, it is largely misunderstood. I first heard about these atrocities when I was a child in secondary school. Before then, it used to be peaceful in the most frequent herding and farming areas of Zamfara State in the northwest of Nigeria. But as we grew older, so did the fear. Abductions and killings became the order of the day. Students and children were stopped from going to schools because of murderous activities of bandits and vigilante groups in Zamfara. What is going on and where are we heading to? I had always wondered. As time passed by, this fear became a part of us which we couldn't shake away. Yet, the criminality of armed groups increased from one year to the next one. Because of threats of attacks, many schools and roads in Zamfara and other areas of the northwestern Nigeria today remain closed. Many children have been unable to access their classrooms for a year and more than years now. In 2019, I met Benjamin Strick and Daniel Adamson, the team at the BBC. We began scratching answers to Nigeria's most pressing questions at the time. Who are these bandits? And what do they want? And most importantly for me, why is this crisis going on? I was a law student then with no experience in journalism or photography. But with the help of BBC, I got some basic trainings on shooting pictures, videos, and recording voices. With this training, an iPhone and a tripod, the assistance of 2 unnamed fixers, I embarked on the journey through the districts and forests of Zamfara and the northwest Nigeria, scratching for answers. We discovered the story through pain and perseverance. We discovered the story of pain inflicted by climate change, corruption, poverty, and injustice. I would like to thank the BBC Africa for its assistance and patience, as well as for giving me the opportunity to share this grieving story to the world. Above all, I would like to thank and express my gratitude to Daniel Adamson, his wife Sami, and their daughter Eleni. Tom Seta, the cameraman who entrusted me with his life. Every morning before we leave, Tom will ask me if everything is okay. I will always tell him it is safe to travel to a killer's house. I would also like to thank Kai Lawrence, Bulamo Bukarti, Aliyu Tanko, who are all here with me today. I would also like to express my gratitude to everyone back home who has assisted me in making this film, many of whom I cannot name today. I would like to thank my mother and my entire family for their love and patience and prayers, as well as the entire BBC Africa Eye production team under the leadership of Mark Perkins. Many Nigerian journalists and friends who have supported in making this film. I have received an unfathomable love and support. I would also like to express my congratulations to all the nominees here tonight and all the winners. I will keep you in my prayers. I would like to thank the Rory Peck Trust, which is a year older than me, for bestowing these honors on me, and more importantly, for recognizing the work of freelancers across the globe. And finally, the Sony Impact, for finding me worthy of honor. Thank you very much, and I wish you a restful night.
Congratulations, Yusuf. Incredible work. That was really well deserved. Now let us welcome to the stage the other outstanding finalists in this category. Unfortunately, Kim isn't able to join us this evening, but he has recorded this message.
Hi, Rory Peck Awards Night. I hope you guys are having a great time in London, and thank you so much for including Chris and I and our work in your competition this year. It's an incredible honor. So just for some brief background about me and the film. So I began my career as a social worker, but I became increasingly concerned about climate and the impacts it was having. And I started to look for things that I could do to have a positive impact. I even rode my bike from Australia to Denmark a number of years ago to attend the COP15 in Copenhagen to advocate for climate action. But afterwards, I was still looking for something I could do to have an impact, and I decided that journalism was the path that I wanted to follow. And since then, I've continued to cover climate in a lot of my work in a variety of different ways. But I'd seen climate politics become incredibly divisive and climate action stagnate all across the world. And in my country, that had been around the issue of coal. Australia is one of the world's biggest coal exporters, and the coal industry have a huge amount of power over the major political parties in my country. And at the grassroots level, I'd seen this real division between climate activists and pro-coal communities or coal mining communities, and there had even been violent confrontations between the two. And I'd never seen climate activists try to sit down with coal miners to try to find some common ground. And I thought that if that was possible at a grassroots level, then potentially that could impact politics at a national level and possibly even international level and try to open up some new pathways to get us through some of this stagnation. So that's what the film was about, to see if that finding common ground was possible and see what opportunities might come out of it.
There's something quite sadistic about the Rory Peck Awards when you get like freelance cameramen and camera women have to speak in front of their reporters. It's like you get a bit of payback, yeah. But firstly, just massive congratulations to Yusuf and the whole Africa Eye team. I think you can see the reaction from the Nigerian government proves how important that film is. So really, massive congratulations to you. And I thought Conversations with Coal Miners is such a remarkable film. It's a kind film, and that's something which is really lacking at the moment. But about our film,
get on with it.
Yeah. It's my little moment. Lots of people have asked us, what was it like filming in Afghanistan since the Taliban took power? And obviously it depends on what you're filming. But for us and for this story. I mean, we worked with a super talented young Afghan producer, and an amazing driver who was like a core member of our team, and we worked with a brilliant network of Afghan journalists, especially in the provinces. Now their names aren't on the credits of the film, and I can't name them here in public to give them thanks, and I think that speaks volumes to what is happening in Afghanistan today. But who I can thank, who's in this room today, is the Commissioner, Tom Giles. And I thought it was we're really grateful to you, because I thought it was a really brave commission. I'm sure that many people would push such a story away when there's there's no guarantee we're not even going to get anyone's face on camera. So thank you, Tom. And also I'd just like to thank Eamon Matthews, who I'm sure there's many people in this room here who have been to the Quicksilver Film School. And I've been there on and off the past 8 years, and I'm still standing and getting nominated for awards. But Eamon's a master storyteller, and I owe so much to him. Yeah, listen, I'm going to shut up now so we can all have a good drink. And yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Massive well done. So thank you all, and thank you very much to Jan and Sony for supporting these important awards for so long. Well, that's the end of the awards part of the evening. A huge congratulations again to all of our winners and finalists. Thank you to our judges. Thank you to our sponsors, Associated Press, Google News Initiative and Sony. Without them, none of this would be possible. It is now my immense pleasure to hand over to the Chair of the Board of Trustees, Tira Schubert, to say a few closing words.
Thank
Thank you very much to Aisha and to Ashish. Thank you for stepping in at the last moment. Don't worry, I'm the last person. I'm not going to keep you long. Just a word about Rory Peck, whose name represents now the support for freelance journalists that we've been talking about in all the different ways that you've seen tonight. I was lucky enough to have worked with Rory. His career was about covering stories that were about people standing up for their freedom. Now, the invasion of the Ukraine is only the latest example of this kind of robust journalism and why it's still needed very much and why it's valued. We were hoping to invite some of our colleagues from Ukraine. We supported here tonight, but they're rather busy this week. However, I have a message from one of them, Olya Sitnik, who has asked this to be read out. And you're going to see an image of her in a moment. We are Ukrainians. We are brave and indomitable and endearing. Some of us are journalists. Having such a profession in time of war is a huge task that many of us can't cope with fully. Some of us can't stand it and decide not to write news about shelling anymore and work on more peaceful topics. Some process the pain of their contributions as much as possible and produce texts of incredible strength. But equally, we need resources, both internal and external. We need psychological support, legal advice, medical care, rest, and money. I say this as a journalist who's received a grant from the Rory Peck Trust, for which I'm sincerely grateful. The money helped me hold on at a time when my strength was at zero. Having rested for a month, I was able to recover, and this not only keeps my family afloat, but allows me to earn a living and also makes me feel like a part of the future victory. A message from Ukraine. Now, and there she is. Thank you. Now, finally, I want to also shout out to Vaughn Smith, who is here. And Vaughn runs the Frontline Club, which many of you know. It is the home of journalists, freelancers, foreign correspondents. And Vaughn is going to host the after party, which will start in about an hour after we get thrown out of the BFI. So anyone who wants to come along, come along. The Frontline Club has done some amazing things this year. Including training, giving safety training to Ukrainian journalists in the Ukraine. Very valuable. So join us there, but we have an hour here first. So I'm going to wrap up with some wise words from one of my mentors when I started journalism. It's time for a drink. Let's go to the bar. Thanks a lot.